Hello everyone, I'm Leroy Harris, Programming Librarian here at the New Ulm Public Library, and I'm very happy to welcome you back to our second annual Stories for the Season. This year we've done a great collaboration together with the State Street Theater, NUCAT, and we're very excited to have the Brown County Historical Society joining us this year to provide us with our reading material. All of the readings that you'll be hearing come from the Brown County Historical Archives. And so they'll include letters, personal remembrances, newspaper clippings, as well as some fun recipes. We hope you enjoy these stories for the season.
Hello, my name is Deborah Engel. I am a volunteer at State Street Theater Company. I do costumes and props and a little bit of acting on the side. And I'm here to read you some wonderful Christmas stories from New Ulm's past. This first one comes from an article written in 1914, and it retells the tale of the first city celebration of the Christmastide. What if the weather was bitingly cold and fingers tingled and feet ached under the too strenuous attentions of Jack Frost? There is no one to say that the first municipal Christmas tree was not a success. There is not the slightest reason to doubt that many things could have been done differently, but there must always be a first time. And if everything had been done just exactly as it could have been wished for, where would be the pleasure in looking forward to any more such municipal doings? No doubt the next time things can be managed so that there will not be much endurance of cold weather, even if the weatherman is in a chilly mood. But looked at in the right spirit, the real Christmas spirit, the celebration held last Wednesday evening was very pleasant, and the slight discomforts should all be forgotten by now in the memory of the good it did to get people out in the fresh, pure air, bringing them close together under the one influence. It was barely 6:30 in the evening when the streets became lively with the passing of many people wending their way to the corner of Minnesota and First North Streets, where the beautiful tree stood in all its bravery of lights and colors. By 7 o'clock, the hour set for the opening of the program, Minnesota Street, was black with people for several blocks, and the Christmas tree was surrounded with a densely packed mass of humanity. A cold wind swept up the street and kept the individuals moving so that the mass resembled a swarm of bees, and some little impatience was expressed because of the delay in beginning the program of the evening. A chorus of ohs and ahs greeted the flashing lights as they gleamed out among the branches, green and red, yellow and blue, crowned at the top by a circle of such brilliant lights that they impaled the street globes into ghostly images. When the photographers came with their cameras to secure a picture of the tree for the various newspapers, they found that this immense circle of light was so bright that it really rendered their task almost impossible. In the picture accompanying this sketch, this ring of light appears only as a great blur. It was very handsome as it appeared on the street. A word of commendation is due to the city electricians who spent an exceedingly cold and uncomfortable day in arranging the lights on the tree. The weather was extremely cold, and the men found their fingers stiffening after working but a few minutes. This made it impossible to accomplish all that they had desired to do, but the effect was very pretty in spite of this handicap. Others who had a cold job were the musicians, and there is little doubt that many of the band boys wished themselves almost anywhere but up on their platform as the cold wind nipped at them while they poured forth the music that did so much to make the occasion more pleasant. The chorus of voices did well, but should have been higher above the people so that all might have enjoyed their carols. Mr. F.W. Johnson and Mayor L.A. Fritsch both gave very excellent talks on the beauty of the occasion and the happiness we in New Ulm should feel that we are so fortunately situated here that we can have and enjoy such pleasures as that afforded by the city for its people. If the weather had been better suited to open-air festivities, the speeches would have been greeted with the enthusiasm they deserved. Following their talks, there was more music, and then Santa Claus and his gnomes appeared to make distribution of the boxes of candy heaped high on long tables extending up the middle of the street towards 2nd North Street. Members of the commercial club assisted Santa in his work, and every youngster who had the courage to bare the cold feet and hands was rewarded by a generous supply of candy, nuts, and fruit. In fact, some of the youngsters had the courage to stand around until they got their share, and that of some other youngster as well. The members of the Christmas Tree Committee who worked so valiantly and well to make the first municipal celebration a success were J.F. Armstrong, chairman, Adolph Mayle, F.W. Johnson, J.A. Ox, and Dr. G.F. Renicky. To them belongs much credit for labors well performed. Businessmen who responded liberally to the request for donations are also to be thanked for the part they took in providing the fund of nearly $400. Of this amount, some $50 to $75 remains, and this may be used to relieve the needs of any of New Ulm's worthy poor, if any are found. If no pressing wants are found, the money will probably be put aside to form the nucleus of another year's celebration expense money. Can you imagine? We have so many Christmas trees all over our streets now, and at one time it was this grand occasion when we had one big lit up tree. What a thought. Interestingly enough, my next story discusses the first Christmas city, or a entrepreneur who took it upon himself to start decorating for Christmas in a rather unusual way. How did New Ulm become the Christmas city? For years, we have taken the beautiful Yuletide decorations as a matter of course, and just naturally supposed that New Ulm was always decked out in her best attire during the holiday season. A quarter of a century ago, 1946, old files revealed that a conversation in the Keller barbershop started the present system of street decorations, and with apologies to the editor, we are borrowing the story for Gene Keller, in whose barbershop the conversation took place, still recalls the incident, which led to the movement that has made New Ulm truly the Christmas city. It began like this. The late F.N.S. Henley and Mr. Keller were chatting in the barbershop, and Mr. Henley inquired, "Well, I suppose you're going to put up the flag pretty soon." And Mr. Keller replied, "No, not this year. I'm going to put up a Christmas tree." Mr. Keller's decision to be different was the forerunner of the present elaborate holiday decorations on Minnesota Street. Previous to this time, merchants had displayed flags along the street in the holiday season, but Mr. Keller decided to display a Christmas tree in the place provided for the flagstaff. "I haven't any Christmas display in my window like other merchants," he reasoned, "so I'll express the Christmas spirit so that the entire street can see it." His original plan, as outlined to Mr. Henley, was to connect the lights on the tree with the electrical outlet for the barber pole. But no sooner had he broached the subject than Mr. Henley saw its possibilities. "Why limit the plan to one place of business?" they asked. And right then and there, they began drawing up plans for the decoration of the entire business district, with the cooperation of the various merchants. They consulted the Everling Electric Company as to the cost of lights and connections, and Mr. Everling helped make more detailed plans for the installation. They inquired of the Fender nursery how much 50 good-sized trees would cost. They contacted the foreman of the electric light plant and city officials, and they were assured that electric current would be provided free of charge, if a sufficient number of merchants approved the plan to make it worthwhile. With this information, the originators of the plan talked to merchants along the street and met with unanimous approval. The idea had hatched a bit late, but 2 or 3 days before Christmas, the trees were in place and lighted to give New Ulm an air of holiday gaiety that drew visitors from long distances, for the idea of decorating streets was new in this territory at the time. The individual Christmas tree plan was followed for a number of years until various considerations, among them the fact that the lights were too easily broken or stolen, led to the adoption of the present type of street decoration, which has been sponsored by the Businessmen's Group. My next story comes from an article written by Theodore Pelzel, written December 1960, recounting an event from 1936 when he assisted a group of carolers to bring joy to some less fortunate people. During the late afternoon of December 21st, 1936, a light snow began to fall. The great silence of the evening was only disturbed by the soft falling snowflakes. By 6 o'clock, the blanketed countryside, reflecting the starlit sky, gave everyone that warm Christmassy feeling. On this eventful December evening, 28 carolers, a children's choir, were transported by drivers of 6 cars to shut-ins and to both hospitals. The drivers decided to head out to the new CCC camp, also designated at the time as the Transient Camp, now Flandreau Park Youth Camp. We drove down Camel's Back Hill, crossed the Cottonwood River, meandered up the highway to the crest of the hills, turned left, and pulled up to the entrance of the park by 8:30 p.m. The road at that time followed a straight ravine down to the camp. It was quite steep, very narrow, and treacherously smooth with the new snow. We thought it safer to walk the distance to the camp. At this particular time, the camp consisted of the office, the dining hall, and 3 bunkhouses. The residents of the camp were 35 men, unemployed veterans, and a few transients who happened through town in need of lodging and meals, but also willing to work. Their working hours were spent in completing 2 more bunkhouses, which already had been enclosed sufficiently to require inside work only. Old oil drum stoves heated these buildings. As mentioned before, we began the trek down the hill on foot. After having walked half the distance, the children began to sing the favorite of all Christmas carols, Silent Night, Holy Night. The singing was continued until we reached the superintendent's office. Mr. Tilden, the superintendent, was standing on the stoop of his office and greeted us with, "For a while we were sure our senses were deceiving us as we heard such heavenly singing coming from seemingly nowhere in this quiet hour of nature." Other men who had been called out of their houses repeated the greeting. Soon thereafter, we were welcomed into one of the houses under construction. The remaining men came from their bunkhouses to the entertainment hall. Our audience, young men in their 30s and 40s, and gray-haired men in their 60s, were sitting on nail kegs, piles of lumber, planks laid across 2 sawhorses, on the woodpile beside the stove. Every man came to hear, every man came to listen. As the children sang a familiar carol, some hummed along. Now and then, a tear was seen trickling down the cheek of this wrinkled or that smooth-shaven face. Could the singing have called forth a childhood memory? A loved one left years ago? A wife and child still waiting for his return? A sweetheart still hoping? Their spontaneous applause inspired the children to sing their best, all the carols they knew, as well as many other songs. After an hour of singing, we had to call it halts, and were ready to leave with a Merry Christmas to all. This hour, which was to cheer up a few less fortunates who would surely not be home for Christmas, became an unforgettable, treasured moment of the Christmas spirit for each of us.